The Horrors of War and the Psychopaths Who Fund It, June 13th, 2024. In Ukraine and the borderlands of Russia, a bleak and depraved picture is emerging. Soldiers lie in wait for their next attack, knowing that at any moment them and their comrades could be blown to smithereens, and they are completely unaware to the enemy's location, due to ill-trained intelligence and a general sense of apathy among Ukrainian soldiers and the enemy. Villages lay in ruins, with the bodies of men, women and children strung out along pavements and roads. The night sky is filled with no stars, but shrapnel, bullets, and the sound of screaming Russian men left to die by their government. Surrender on both sides is a common occurrence, and soldiers, as well as residents, feel let down and put upon by warfare and the states that sponsor it. Meanwhile, in the Canadian Parliament, politicians wave Ukrainian flags and applaud a former SS member in a display of faux patriotism, and a total disconnect from the reality on the ground. Soldiers are left totally and completely alone, often after being dragged by the hand of the state to fight for a war they want no part in, and are faced with nothing but incompetence and corruption in the higher ranks of their respective military units. All the while, the West funnels more money into the hands of a corrupt Ukrainian government who is happy to forcibly drag young men to their deaths and sacrifice to the altar of Western democracy to a war they want no part in and have no strong feeling towards. And the Russian state, happy to bomb villages and rape and kill innocent civilians in the name of some sense of depraved Cold War nostalgia. In Israel and Palestine, the picture is no prettier. Millions of children lay slaughtered where they stand, by the state of Israel, and even some British aid workers lay amongst the ruins of former hospitals and schools. Yet no attempt is made by Western governments to question the tactics of Israel, and analyse whether or not using taxpayer monies to fund such atrocities is a moral thing to do. Even a willful reluctance to criticise Israel after they murdered British citizens, and on one hand of the conflict there is Hamas, aided by crazed, Sharia-loving world leaders and willfully ignorant white liberals as they slaughter, rape and kidnap Israeli citizens. The government speaks rightly of how Hamas is a terrorist organisation and shouldn't be supported, yet they turn a blind eye and throw their fingers in their ears to Hamas sympathisers who chant their slogans of genocide within their own country and call anyone who criticises such displays of antiquated Islamic extremism as racists or far right, while ignoring the fact that many British Muslims and Asians are equally as terrified of these mobs as the white British. So then why would a state who espouses their wholehearted love for Israel then allow members of the state of Palestine, in other words, the state they're currently at war with, to arrive on British and American soil in their thousands and be placed among unwilling and innocent communities next to primary schools and daycare centres? The answer is simple. The state only desires that which is in its interest. The whole point of these wars and conflicts is conquest on the part of the state. They aim to ruin homogenous communities by importing thousands of economic migrants from enemy states or through the use of direct warfare so that no one anywhere has any form of identity or culture, and that the only culture that exists within the globalists' parameter is a culture of state worship and control. A population so utterly disconnected with its roots that it is incapable of governing itself. The truth is, the politicians and members of the globalist state do not care about Ukraine. If they did, they wouldn't have let Ukraine attempt to join NATO, thus destroying Ukraine's peace agreement with Russia and leading to this horrific war, a peace agreement which, by the way, even had provisions for Ukraine to join the European Union, proving unequivocally that the general population in both Russia and the West have been lied to about this war. They do not care about Israel or Palestine, otherwise they wouldn't let Hamas sympathisers hold parades where they target and in some cases get violent against Jewish people in their nations. They wouldn't have put a police officer in these Hamas protests to tell a British Jewish man to leave the area because he is, quote, very obviously Jewish. Nor would they have turned a blind eye to the actions of Israel and allowed British aid workers to die. They do not care about any of these conflicts. They care about the end goal of all of them, which is, and has always been, the destruction of all nations and the idea of those nations, in order to create one top-down nation controlled by elites and wealthy backers, and those who have no quarrels with the likes of the murderous Tony Blair or the criminal crack addict who was involved in Ukraine, a Mr. Hunter Biden. We must outright reject every wall they put in front of us, as the only true threat to liberty and freedom is them and their war hawk cronies. and I for one refuse to die for the likes of Hunter Biden or the Jimmy Savile defendant and paid defendant of the terrorist organisation Hizbut Tahrir, Keir Starmer.